Hello everyone! Eddie Murphy, one of the greatest comedic geniuses the world has ever known, a man who has brought joy, laughter, and unforgettable characters to millions across the globe, carries a life story that is far more tragic and heartbreaking than most fans could ever imagine. Because behind the loud applause, the blockbuster films, the stand-up specials that made history, and the accolades that cemented him as one of Hollywood's most bankable stars, there exists a man who has quietly endured tremendous loss, loneliness, and heartbreak that shaped his journey in ways the public rarely sees. Born Edward Regan Murphy on April 3, 1961, in Brooklyn, New York, Eddie grew up in a working-class family that was marked by instability and pain from an early age, as his father, a police officer and amateur comedian, was murdered when Eddie was just 8 years old, leaving a permanent scar on his young heart and forcing him and his brother Charlie to grow up without the stability of a father figure, while his mother battled illness and eventually remarried, placing Eddie in a fractured home environment where he often had to use humor as both a shield and survival mechanism. Comedy became Eddie's escape, a way to process trauma and pain, and by the time he was a teenager, he was already honing his talent through impersonations and stand-up routines that would one day catapult him onto Saturday Night Live, where his brilliance made him a household name almost overnight, with characters like Buckwheat, Gumby, and Mr. Robinson making him the undeniable star of the show. But what fans didn't see was that Eddie, while making the world laugh, was still internally battling the grief of his father's death, the struggles of a broken home, and the pressures of sudden fame at such a young age. As Eddie transitioned into films, the 1980s became his decade of dominance with massive hits like 48 Hours, Trading Places, Beverly Hills Cop, and Coming to America, turning him into one of Hollywood's first black megastars. But success came with its own tragedies, as the demands of fame stripped him of privacy, forced him into grueling schedules, and made him a target of criticism and envy. And while he had the world at his feet, his personal life began to unravel with broken relationships, failed marriages, and a constant struggle to find true, lasting love. His marriage to Nicole Mitchell, once seen as a picture-perfect Hollywood romance, ended after 13 years and 5 children, leaving him devastated, while his later relationships, including his brief and complicated involvement with Spice Girl Mel B, brought more heartbreak, public disputes, and custody battles that kept his private life in constant turmoil, painting a portrait of a man who seemed to have it all but struggled to keep his personal world intact. Professionally, the 1990s and early 2000s brought another kind of tragedy, as the same critics who once hailed him began to tear him down after a string of box office disappointments like The Adventures of Pluto Nash and Meet Dave, turning Eddie into a punchline rather than a pioneer. And though he delivered one of his most powerful performances in Dreamgirls, earning an Oscar nomination, even that triumph was overshadowed by his abrupt exit from the Academy Awards ceremony and the perception that Hollywood had grown tired of him, pushing him into a semi-retirement where he rarely appeared in public. Yet perhaps the greatest heartbreak of Eddie's life came with the death of his beloved brother Charlie Murphy in 2017, a man who wasn't just his sibling, but also his best friend, creative partner, and emotional anchor, whose sudden passing from leukemia left Eddie crushed in a way words could barely capture. And those close to him say that Eddie, who already preferred a reclusive lifestyle, retreated even further into privacy, using his children as his main source of comfort, while carrying the unbearable weight of losing the one person who had truly understood both his struggles and his successes. Added to that was the humiliation of highly publicized scandals, such as the infamous 1997 incident when Eddie was stopped by police with a transgender woman in his car, an event that spiraled into endless tabloid headlines and late-night jokes that mocked his character, further isolating him and painting him as a figure of controversy rather than compassion, despite his insistence that he was merely offering a ride to someone in need. And though Eddie eventually found the tragedy of peace Eddie Murphy lies in the fact that while he gave us laughter to heal our wounds, he has spent much of his life quietly nursing wounds of his own. A heartbreaking reality that makes his legacy not just about comedy, but about survival, resilience, and the profound cost of brilliance in a world that often forgets the humanity of its brightest stars. Thanks for watching.